5 myths threatening our environmental future. Betsy Rosenberg of Green Media Maven is an award-winning national broadcast journalist and environmental host and radio producer. She is a keen observer of how climate change and other ecological issues are covered by mainstream news outlets, or not, as the case may be. Betsy has dedicated her career to being a communications conduit between eco-innovators and the public. Please welcome Betsy Rosenberg.
Thank you. Okay, so if I don't get to all 5 myths, ask me back to finish. I gave the same talk to my alma mater. I spoke at Cal for the first time in 40 years, stepped foot on my old campus, to an environmental communications class, and it was an hour-and-a-half talk on 7 myths. So I thought I had 7 minutes. I found out I only had 5, so here goes. But first, I have to say that connection. I know Kiki through Green Circles. Great to see what you're doing. Jacqueline Mineta, the young woman who inspired this, wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for me. Huh? Her parents met at my party, David and Lisa Mineta, just to show you, and I wasn't expecting to see these connections here. And I just want to congratulate all of you for filling the room. I noticed on next door there were people looking for tickets to Old Cella, the 3-day baby boomer Woodstock that's going on in Las Vegas this weekend with Rolling Stones, Crosby, Stills, Nash, The Who, and people were looking for tickets to PopUp. Right next to each other there. So I'm happy to be at PopUp, even though it sure would be fun to be at, they're calling it Old Cella, which is cute, instead of Coachella. But I also have experience with mental illness in my family and suicide. That was not part of my planned talk. But that's really what got me focused on the environment, so I thought it was a legitimate connection to make. As a survivor of suicide and mental illness in my immediate family, I saw what happened when warnings were ignored. And as I was doing news for CBS radio for 20 years, and traffic and weather together got a little bit old, and fires and floods and murder and mayhem wasn't quite as exciting after I worked at the network in New York for a couple of years during the collapse of communism, San Francisco earthquake. It all happened on the beat that I was doing the 5-minute newscast at the top of the hour. I came home, got married to my wonderful husband Alan, had my daughter, who is now a senior at NYU, and I said, I've got to do something with my voice. I can't keep doing breaking news. And my husband helped me realize that I was a waste prevention nut after him the first few years of our marriage, wasting the water, paper, and it just bothered me always. I guess I was born with this green gene. So he said, go do Trash Talk on KCBS, and I don't know if any of you ever heard that, but started Earth Day 1997, so coming up on the 20th anniversary. And as I went from garbage to global warming, looking at our waste, what's coming out of our tailpipes, became even more compelling than what's going into our landfill. So this has been quite a journey. Trash Talk Local Minutes turned into a 1-hour show on Air America, and they went bankrupt, and I ejected right before they crash landed, was on the internet for 5 years doing radio, decided to quit and try to break into television. Why? Because the people behind the movement are passionate and positive, and I think that's the missing element. So getting back to the myths, I will start with media, because that's what I'm obsessed with. I have been trying to get a radio network, now a television network, CNN at the moment, to say yes to one program, because there are none in this country, not one radio or television show nationally talking about the solutions. What are we going to do about our planetary pickles? And it's not just one, but of course climate change is the mother of all environmental challenges, making everything worse. I just want to ask you a quick question, because this is Marin County. We're all educated. We have the luxury to educate ourselves on things. How many of you know the significance of the number 350 in the context of climate change? Nobody? My husband doesn't count. Yay, Max Perkoff, you get the prize. I know Max from our synagogue. Shana Tova, Happy New Year. You just won. How many of you know who Bill McKibben is? I'm just genuinely really curious. Husband doesn't count. 1. Okay, how many of you know which mass extinction we are in the midst of? How many of you knew that we are in the midst of a mass extinction? 1? Okay, how many of you know what's causing this one for the first time ever? We are. Humans, first time ever. So, you make my point. Thank you. Our eco-literacy levels are a little bit lacking in this country. And don't feel bad, it's not you. I do these pop quizzes all the time, and nobody seems to know. And so the first problem, the myth is that Americans know what's going on environmentally, and we really don't. And why should we? How can we? I didn't grow up having environmental studies. Yes, they're teaching it now in college and some high schools. But what about we baby boomers who are going to live to 100, 110, right? We have many days, years, choices, consumer choices, voting choices ahead of us, what we drive, what we eat, what we build. We need to educate ourselves quickly, because that leads me to the second myth, that we have plenty of time to solve these problems. How many of you know how many years we have to cap our emissions at a point that will keep us to 2 degrees warming this century? Any of you heard warnings from climate scientists? They've been saying we have 2 to 5 years, and they've been saying that for 4 years. We don't have time. We need to wake up and smell the carbon. As I say, we need to get off our gases. We need to really connect the green dots. We are heading for a climate cliff. The number 350 came from Bill McKibben, who is sort of the recent Al Gore. He's an author, teacher from Middlebury, Vermont, who became the climate activist for this current era. And he started an organization, I encourage you all to check it out, 350.org. 350 million parts per million is the safe level, according to climate scientists, experts in their field, whom I think we should listen to, is the safe level. And anybody know where we are now? Okay, thank you. 407 parts per million. We are sailing past 400. That's just a way to quantify where we're at. So anybody notice the weather's getting a little strange? Global weirding, extreme flooding, fires, hurricanes? Yeah, it's what has been predicted, which is leading me to the next myth, that climate change or global warming is a political issue. No, it's been politicized in this country only. It's been propagandized in this country only, and it's been polarized. It is the ultimate practical issue. What kind of weather we have determines not only, look at damaging storms. How much does that cost us economically? Our food, our water, all is affected by stable climate. I mean, it's something we grew up with, we were fortunate to take for granted, but we can't anymore. And if anyone needs any examples, because people said to me for years, my friends would say, Betsy, people aren't going to listen to you until there's a crisis. And I would say, which one do you want to talk about? and they're out there. But our media, which leads me to the third myth, is not covering it adequately. Not only do we not, getting back to my obsession myth, the media, not only do we not have any programs, yes, CNN is starting to mention climate change, although I've been watching round the clock since Hurricane Matthew hit, and not yet. I'm waiting for them to mention it. They talk about this weather, they talk about the storm, the wind. If the media, who's supposed to be reflecting what's important in our world, and if CNN, the global news leader, is not covering global warming, people don't understand that this extreme weather is caused, you can't say for sure every storm is, but it's exactly the pattern, weather on steroids, that experts in their field, 97.7%, have said is happening. So if I wonder, these poor people who are losing their lives in Louisiana and Haiti, certainly, in the crazy flooding we saw in Vermont, in the drought, in the wildfires, costing us lives, livelihoods, livestock, you name it, the extended drought. If people knew that this was most likely climate change, they would be a lot more concerned about it, wouldn't they? And we would not have this lack of literacy. So it's a really big cost for them not to be informing us. And that leads me to the next myth, which is, well, whose responsibility is it anyway? I think the media has a role, but when I've asked people in the media, they say, no, that's up to Sierra Club and Greenpeace to educate Americans. It's not up to us. Well, guess what? If you belong to one of those organizations, and there's many wonderful ones, Earth Justice, Union of Concerned Scientists, NRDC, you get a newsletter and you get informed on all these issues. But guess who joins environmental groups? People who are concerned about the environment, already pretty eco-savvy. So it's kind of a feedback loop that continues, and it's still an issue that's been marginalized when it shouldn't be, because again, it affects all of us. It already is in so many ways. Which leads me to, let's see, eco-literacy, media. Oh, the government is taking care of it. Any of you think government is very efficient and gets things done? How many of you? So if you're waiting for the government to do something, forget it. Yes, we have an EPA. They're not given nearly enough power, and it's a big bureaucracy. So if government's not going to solve it, and if the green groups are only reaching themselves, greenies, tree huggers, whatever, God bless them, who is talking to us about solutions? Nobody. who's talking to you about what you can do, how you can play your part? And it's not just climate change, it's a lot of issues. Nobody. So there is a gap there, and I'm trying to fill that green gap. And there are tons of solutions. That's the good news. I'm not sure if I hit all 5. You'll have to just have me back if you want to hear the other 2. And if you want to hear the solutions, I promise you there are more than I could fit into a 5-minute talk. And come up and ask me, and I'll tell you where you can find out about a lot more. I've got 5,000 of my shows archived on my website. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here in my hometown.